Hey guys, today we'll be taking a look at the Economist forecast for the 2020 presidential election between former Vice President Joe Biden and incumbent President Donald Trump. And as you can see, according to this forecast right here, the former Vice President has an 8 in 9 chance, or an 89% chance of winning the 2020 presidential election, winning the Electoral College, and President Trump has a 1 in 10 chance of doing the same thing. And looking at their chances of winning the popular vote, or the most votes, Joe Biden has a 19 in 20, better than 19 in 20 chance of winning the popular vote, to President Trump with just a 2% chance of winning the popular vote. In 2016, Clinton, of course, won the popular vote, but lost the Electoral College, which is why she lost the election, even though she did receive more votes. And then looking at the predicted range of Electoral College votes from their simulations, as you can see, the predicted range for Joe Biden is anywhere from 221 to 421 electoral votes. And then for President Trump, it's between 117 and 317. So the best case scenario right now for Joe Biden, is 421 electoral votes. This would be the largest victory for any Democrat since 1964. And then for President Trump, 317 electoral votes. That would be just 11 electoral votes higher than his victory in 2016. And keep in mind, this is the best, absolute best case scenario for the current president. As I'm looking at the estimated Electoral College votes for both Joe Biden and President Trump, as you can see in the last couple of days, Joe Biden's numbers have gone up while Trump's numbers have gone down. This is after the first presidential election debate, where we saw that Biden's numbers have jumped up to 340 electoral votes on average, from around 334. That's where his average was at for quite a while, and where it was at the last time we took a look at this forecast. So we are just, less than a month, or basically a little bit more than a month, 1 month and 1 day away from the election and from election day. So this is all pretty exciting, and as you can see, Joe Biden's lead does seem to be increasing, and we'll just have to see how the next debates go, or if anything really occurs, because as you can see, Joe Biden's lead has been very consistent this entire election cycle, which is why I really do not see Joe Biden's numbers dropping drastically like they did for Hillary Clinton, because if you really did take a look at the polls in 2016, you'll see that in the last couple of days, she might have still been leading in many of the battleground states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, but the newer numbers, they were not showing too great of a sign. They were showing definitely a shift to the right, and a lot of voters, undecided voters, for basically the entire election cycle, really did only make up their mind at the very end and decide to choose President Trump, mainly because, in my opinion, of the email scandals that Hillary Clinton was just constantly involved in for her entire campaign. And looking at both Joe Biden and President Trump's chances of winning, as you can see, Joe Biden now has the highest chance of winning he has ever had this entire election cycle. 89% on the 26th in August, and now 89% on October 1st. Joe Biden has never had a better chance of winning the election after the first debate. As you can see, before the first debate, it was sitting around 85-86%. Now Biden's all the way up at an 89% chance of winning the election. This is similar to the chances that Hillary Clinton had, but you have to keep in mind that 4 years ago, nobody expected that Trump was going to win. So Trump's numbers were definitely deflated, and Clinton's chances of winning were definitely overestimated. However, this time around, President Trump has already won an election. So his chances, if he were running against Joe Biden right now and he was not the incumbent, I'm sure his numbers would really just be at around 1-2% of winning the Electoral College, because he's down in basically every single swing state. And I'm going to take a look at all that a little bit closer in just a couple moments here. But the president is literally down in every single swing state. Joe Biden's at least going to flip 5, 6, states that Trump won from 2016 right now. So this election is looking to be pretty devastating for the president. And these are their Electoral College simulations. As you can see, everything is basically just blue. We have some red ones over here, but they're all really short. This is basically their 20,000 simulations, and which outcomes came out the most, and the most is around 380 electoral votes right here. I don't think this is going to happen. I think it's somewhere going to be around 320 to 350 electoral votes. So I think that best case, Joe Biden wins around 350. Worst case, he wins around 330, which is basically Barack Obama's margins from 2012. I don't think that Joe Biden is going to be able to outperform Barack Obama's margins from 2008, but definitely if some key states do go to him, that is definitely possible. He is leading in Georgia and North Carolina right now, as well as the state of Iowa on Real Clear Politics, and both of them, he's leading in both of the other states in both sites. However, currently, the state of Iowa is projected to go to President Trump on 538 and to Joe Biden on Real Clear Politics. So it's a little bit of a a contrast there. But if Joe Biden wins Iowa, Florida, the state of Georgia, as well as Ohio and North Carolina, of course, he would win 375 electoral votes, which is more than the amount of electoral votes that Barack Obama in his landslide election. He was a once-in-a-lifetime candidate. He is the dream candidate for the Democratic Party, and he only won 369 electoral votes against a Republican Party that was looking very weak. And I think that the GOP right now is in a pretty similar situation. We have an economic recession and just a lot of, just horrible things happening in the country as a result of the previous Republican administration. And then taking a look at this by winner, this is basically just they plot out all of these results into squares. So there's an 89% chance that you're going to pick a blue square if you just pick a random square, and 10% of these squares are Trump winning squares, or red squares, and then there's less than 1% of gray squares, which is basically a tie. And then taking a look at each candidate's chances of winning in each state, I think this is the most interesting thing to look at. As you can see, so many solid states for Joe Biden. For President Trump, not as many. States in the Deep South, Louisiana, 99% chance, Mississippi 98. So these are still not over 99%. So these are not technically safe states for President Trump. And keep in mind, this is chances of winning. So if as long as you're leading in the state by quite a bit, you basically have a 100% chance of winning that state. And you will also see that Montana, 99% chance, Alaska, only 90% chance. This is a state that went to the president by 14.4%. He should have no trouble carrying this state. But now Joe Biden has a 1 in 10 chance of flipping the state of Alaska. You can also see the state of South Carolina, 93% chance. This is another state that went to the president by over 14% in 2016. Now he only has a 93% chance of carrying it again. The state of North Carolina, this is a state that President Trump won by 3.6% just 4 years ago. Joe Biden now has an almost 2 in 3 chance of winning the state of South Carolina and flipping it for the first time since 2008, I believe. And then the state of Georgia, 51% chance of going to President Trump. This is a Republican state, a very strong Republican state that has not voted Democratic since 1992. This is a state that Bill Clinton was able to win basically 30 years ago, and the Republicans were able to have pretty solid victories in the early 2000s. Bush won both of his elections with solid margins here in the state of Georgia. In 2012, John McCain made it a little bit closer. Mitt Romney increased off of McCain's lead, but in 2016, Trump only won the state by 5%. And the demographics here in the state of Georgia are shifting towards the left, which is why Joe Biden definitely does have a chance. But I think that in 2024, Georgia is going to be one of the most contested races. But this time around, I do think it's still going to go to Donald Trump, but Joe Biden's definitely doing very well. And if numbers continue to rise, I might have to put Georgia back into the Biden column, as I've not put Georgia into the column for Joe Biden since basically mid-Southern, when he was actually leading there by 2 or 3%. The state of Ohio, Donald Trump has a 58% chance of winning, a state he won by over 8% 4 years ago against Secretary Clinton. He now only has a 58% chance of winning Ohio. The state of Iowa, 62% chance of going to President Trump. 62, in a state that he won by over 9% 4 years ago, 62% chance. And this state currently is polling in favor of Joe Biden. So is Ohio. So is Georgia. So these states are not looking too strong for President Trump, especially after this debate, as we see the national numbers creeping up for Joe Biden, as well as numbers in just many of these key states. Arizona, Joe Biden has a 64% chance of flipping the state for the first time since 1996. Another state that Clinton was the last Democrat to carry, the state of Texas, a state that has never gone to any Democrat since 1976. Jimmy Carter was the last Democrat to carry the state of Texas, and now Donald Trump only has a 79% chance of carrying the state. A state that Mitt Romney carried by a solid margin just 8 years ago. Trump carried it by 8%, and that was a pretty disappointing margin for the president in Texas. And the GOP cannot survive without Texas. If Joe Biden wins Texas, he doesn't have to win any of these states. He does not have to win Wisconsin, doesn't have to win Michigan, doesn't have to win Pennsylvania, doesn't have to win Florida. As long as he wins Texas and all the Clinton states from 2016, he's going to win the election. Now, I think that's almost definitely not going to happen, but that's just how important Texas is for the GOP. If Trump loses Texas, there is no possible way that President Trump can even get to 270 electoral votes. He can win Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Florida, Georgia, Arizona, and all of his solid red states. And as long as he doesn't win Texas, he is not going to win this election. So there are 133 electoral votes from the competitive states. So as you can see, Joe Biden does not need to win any of these competitive states: Florida, Arizona, North Carolina, Georgia, Ohio, Iowa, Texas. Joe Biden can win the election, even go over it with the state of Nevada and Pennsylvania being the tipping point state. In this case, I do think it's going to Pennsylvania. A lot of people are saying that Pennsylvania is going to be the state that's going to get Joe Biden over 270 electoral votes. This is, of course, Joe Biden's birth state, and then Nevada, another 6 electoral votes. So Joe Biden can lose Nevada as well, which is not a competitive state on this map right now. He has an 86% chance of carrying the state of Nevada. So Joe Biden can lose every single competitive state and still win the election, and there's nothing that President Trump can do about that. So some pretty devastating data for the president. He's going to flip all of these states, but at this point, I don't see how he's going to flip Nevada, a state that Clinton won, how he's going to flip Pennsylvania, a state that he's down by 6-7 points, New Hampshire, a state that he's down 9-10%, Wisconsin, state that he's down basically 7-8%, and Michigan as well. Similar margins in Wisconsin and Michigan now. These states are both seeing an increase in support for Joe Biden, and of course, Joe Biden is currently on his train tour in Pennsylvania and Ohio. Pennsylvania being the tipping point state on most projections, and then the state of Ohio, a state that Joe Biden definitely has a very realistic chance of flipping this time around. Ohio would be 18 electoral votes in Biden's column, and I think that all of these states, they really don't matter as long as Joe Biden gets to 270 electoral votes. But what Joe Biden needs to do is, instead of being like Hillary Clinton, he needs to focus on getting more pathways to victory. Because for Hillary Clinton, she totally neglected the Rust Belt. She didn't visit the state of Wisconsin, a state that went to Trump at the end by 0.7% in basically the last 5 months of her campaign. So she totally neglected this area, while Joe Biden is doing the exact opposite. Joe Biden is not making these same mistakes that Clinton made 4 years ago. He is visiting these Rust Belt states all the time, and now he's, of course, on a train tour in both Pennsylvania and Ohio. So I think that's definitely going to boost his support in both of these states, and if Donald Trump really does not do anything about this, I do think that Ohio might just slip for the president. And in addition to that, President Trump, he is currently having money problems. And that is just a fact, because President Trump is now spending less money than ever in every single swing state. He's being outspent 2-1 in basically every single state on the airways compared to Joe Biden. And some new numbers that came out, Joe Biden has spent $260 million in ads this entire campaign, basically from March. President Trump spent $160 million. And what's surprising about this, or not million, $1 billion, I believe, yes, $1 billion. So Joe Biden has spent, not billion, not billion, $1 million. Joe Biden has spent $260 million to President Trump with $160 million. And what this means is that Joe Biden has earned so much more money in these last couple of months than President Trump. Because if you remember, at the beginning of the campaign and during the Democratic primary, during the end of the Democratic primary, Joe Biden did have a fundraising problem. He was constantly fundraising under Warren, under Sanders, under Buttigieg and Harris, and even sometimes Beto O'Rourke. So Joe Biden definitely did have a fundraising problem during the Democratic primary, but now it seems as if that's all gone away. And many of these recent issues have definitely boosted the amount of money that the Democrats are taking in. After the debate, Joe Biden earned millions of dollars in just 1 hour after the first debate just a couple of days ago. And then after the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the Democrats made tens of millions of dollars in donations from that. And just all these events are just stacking up, the cash pile for the Democratic Party and especially Joe Biden. So I think that he's got a lot of cash right now to spend in many of these states. And it really does matter. The amount of money you spend in an election really can change the entire race and the outcomes. And so we have here a list of the key states. And basically, Donald Trump leads in none of these states. There is no state that Trump leads in this entire list. So you can see these margins. The only 3 states that Biden actually, or that Clinton won in 2016, Minnesota, New Hampshire, Nevada. All of these states, every single one is going to go to Joe Biden, with the exception of the state of Georgia, which has a 51% chance of going to the president, and the chance of a voter deciding election 1 in 24. And the tipping point probability of this state is 4%, with Pennsylvania, of course, being at the top here, 25%. So Joe Biden is expected to win all of these states except for the state of Georgia, which currently only has a 51% chance of going to President Trump. This is not good. You look at all of this. Pennsylvania, state that went to Trump by 0.8, Joe Biden plus 6. Trump plus 1 in 2016. In Florida, Biden plus 3. Michigan, Wisconsin plus 7. Trump plus 0.2 and 0.8 just 4 years ago. North Carolina has swung 6 points to the left. Minnesota has swung 6 points to the left as well. Arizona 6 points too. And then New Hampshire 6.6 points. State of Georgia, basically it's going to be a tie. It's going to be a Trump victory by less than 1% according to this. Nevada, another 3-point swing in favor of Joe Biden compared to Clinton's numbers from 2016. And then the model popular vote each day, as you can see, Joe Biden's numbers have climbed quite a bit since the debate, went from around 53.9 to 54.3. That's a pretty significant amount of people if you really think about 0.4% of the American electorate. And the numbers are still projected to get a little bit closer, 53.7 on election night for Joe Biden to President Trump with 46.3. But this really doesn't matter. I think that the polling data really does not matter where it is on election night. As long as Joe Biden's ahead, I think he's going to do very well, because I think that a majority of the votes will already have been cast before election night. A lot of votes will be cast pretty early this time around. So we're going to see, more and more mail-in ballots being sent in, which means more and more votes for Joe Biden, I guess, because most of the people that are going to be using absentee ballots are Democrats. And I think this is a very good sign for Joe Biden that, he doesn't even need to be leading by that much on election night. He just needs to be able to sustain his lead for quite a while. I think that that type of awkward surprise that the Republicans threw on Hillary Clinton with the reopening of her email investigation is not going to work this time. If they do something like that before election night, it's going to swing some voters, but I don't think it's going to be enough to really give Joe Biden to really make Joe Biden lose this election that he is currently on a very straight path to victory right now. And I think that President Trump at this point, he has to do something pretty drastic, and I really don't see what President Trump could actually do. And then finally, this is just how states move together, really not too important here, but as you can see, Rust Belt states tend to move together. I think this is pretty interesting to take a look at. As you see, California correlates only with the Sunbelt states, and then you can see Hawaii, and then some states like New York, New Jersey. So this is basically just, if these states flip, other states have chances, have higher chances of doing better for Joe Biden as well. So you can take a look at all this by yourself. This is the Economist forecast for the 2020 presidential election, one of my favorite forecasts to take a look at on this channel. And so yeah, that is it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like down below. Also consider subscribing to my channel, and leave your thoughts in the comments below, along with any suggestions for videos like to see from in the future. If you leave a comment within the first 2-3 hours of this upload, I will try to answer all of them. If you have any questions you would like to ask me, this is the time to do it. I will try to answer as many questions as I can that you put down there in the comments below. And so yeah, I will see all of you guys in the next video.